commercial weed. And so, I mean, I know it's kind of not so much of a broad topic as it is a new topic, as it concerns some older people, I'd say more, that grew up maybe smoking a different kind of a product and are now in a world where the product offered to us is definitely, in some instances, stronger or whatever, but definitely maybe not the same kind of product we got 20 years ago, right? And so thanks for watching the videos. I really appreciate it. I've talked about marijuana on the channel many times. I am a proponent of legalizing marijuana on a federal level, and I do, however, have more concerns, I think, as the future goes than I think I would have even maybe like 10 years ago in terms of I don't think that commercially available marijuana is maybe as safe as we'd like to think it is. Now, the problem with making, you know, theoretical statements like this is that oftentimes there's not any conclusive evidence that has been gathered yet because policy is so new. Now, one could then make the argument that that's why recently our government delisted marijuana as a class 1 narcotic down to, or a class A to a class C, or a class 1 to a class 3. I'm not sure exactly how they do that thing, but I know that one of the biggest provisions, one of the biggest things allowed now as a result of delisting it from a higher classification of drug to a lower one is that funding can now be applied for through research grants provided by the government so that we can finally start to study on a national level the long-term benefits and or negative effects that commercially made available weed has on a person. And so it's not just, and this is kind of, again, where things get funky with the free market and incentivizing money over quality, in terms of if there's a lack of regulation, then quite often there's exploitative mannerisms executed from that company and or entity and or institutional behavior to sort of push that agenda forward. And while I am, again, a huge proponent of pushing marijuana legislation forward and passing it and legalizing it and taxing it and things like this, bigger questions come to mind, right? Like, what kind of marijuana will be available? Will it be as safe to ingest as something that I would grow at the house? And I'm afraid, even honestly, that the concern is, such as it is for food, in terms of losing the connection of where that comes from in sort of like a hippie kind of a way. I mean, yes, kind of the cool thing about marijuana is its simplicity and its rewards for such. And when you start to wonder where your marijuana is coming from, I mean, just as much as I'd argue we should think about these things like everything else in life, like where is this food coming from that I'm buying prepackaged, ultra processed at my local grocery store, things like that. And then we still do it, right? But it's sort of like before we have no other option, there's kind of like this final, sort of reluctance to acknowledge, sort of what's happening, because what's happening isn't fair and or right. And so I find myself on that side of the argument here. I think that with the lack of regulation comes the lack of being able to conclusively have the knowledge base that's required to be honest and accountable with the product that you sell, and regardless of its legality, in terms of, like, I mean, you don't want to harm people. That shouldn't be anybody's goal ever, right? I mean, in fact, it should be a goal to actively seek out how not to harm people, because harming people seems to be such a popular kind of a thing at the expense of the person who's providing that mean of revenue or whatever. And so again, I am a huge fan of marijuana, and I think more as it becomes available commercially, I wonder about its safety and efficacy as it concerns the people who are buying that particular product. And again, I now know too that I live in a world where I can grow my own marijuana, and I think that's super flexible as far as now there's something new to learn, because people like, growing their own food at their house because they don't want to buy it at the grocery store. Kind of make that same argument for marijuana. I want to at some point grow my own marijuana so that I don't have to buy it from a place where I might not know where it comes from. And again, no bag on the business or the free market. Again, it's just sort of like, if the trust was there, my business and money would be there. But if the trust is lacking, then I think it's time to take the money and trust elsewhere.